fast. I mean, it's a tough uphill battle. I said before we took our break. Yes, but we want to thank our sponsor, Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company, for all your mortgage needs. Get branch manager Cora Holbrook a call at area code 781-342-0252. Guarantee Mortgage is located at 75 State Street in downtown Boston. Guarantee Rate Mortgage Company, guaranteed to exceed your expectations. In fact, we're going to be getting a new sponsor because Cora is going to be leaving Guaranteed Rate, so we're going to be switching over to her new company. So she just advised me of that the other day. Yeah, so she's moving on. She's got a better opportunity with another company. We're making those announcements in the future, but hopefully we can also. She's trying to negotiate some additional funding for the station in general to help out with key. So we can have these type of conversations all week long and not just on Saturday morning. But we want to try to do our part to support it financially.
It's important to have these conversations where people are up and about and they can kind of tune in because the reach is limited. But it's important to have those kind of conversations so that people can actually hear it and be, in clearing their minds and not having this fog of sleep in their minds when they're hearing.
Right. But especially when there are so many important things that are affecting us right now, and we're paying more attention to social things, entertainment, than we are about reality. That, those people in Washington, D.C. who we think very little of, but they have so much control over our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But I guess the question again is, how do we get people to invest in that, in a meaningful way? And that once it's done, like I was saying, it's hard to unring the bell once it's been rung. And this is where we are now. We are really, this, as President Biden says a lot, this is not just hyperbole. This is real. This is real.
Yeah, but again, it goes right back to the fact that people people tune out.
Right.
They feel like, hey, listen, there's nothing I can do, but it's not. And I do agree with that. There's nothing you can do individually, but us together.
Right.
That's where the power is, that become a part of that movement that says we will not allow you to take our rights away. We will not allow you to take the rights of a woman away to make a decision about her body, because from taking, when you take that right, now it's going to be another right you want to take, and then there's going to be another right. So we're going to stop this right at this point. We're not going to allow it. We're going to use our power to vote to make sure that you don't nullify our vote in the future, because we want to be able to come back to this vehicle to prevent you from doing other things that you may want to do to hurt us.
But the Christian conservatism has moved this into that, where these are folks who in the past, at least, they had some values where someone like Donald Trump wouldn't, but it's by any means necessary now.
Yes.
Where we know someone who has none of the values, been married multiple times, is getting ready to go on trial for sleeping with probably one of many porn stars, and yet they embrace him because he was able to put people in the court because of his ignorance.
See, that is the piece, Larry. It's not him that they're in.
Exactly.
It's the fact that he can actually leave his breadcrumbs that we're going to have to deal with for the next 50 years.
Right.
Because the Christian conservative movement have actually targeted the judiciary. If we can change the judiciary,
which we can, it's not in the Constitution. There's no set number of people who can be on the Supreme Court.
Exactly. It's not.
So we don't have to live with this.
No, the Supreme Court just says. In fact, the Supreme Court is the only court that's outlined in the Constitution, and it's mentioned as it will be the court that actually decide the grievances of government. All right. So it does. So everything else is a creation of that system by the Supreme Court and the representatives. So, but where I'm going here is that we can determine through our power to vote that we will not allow the Christian conservative movement to change our government, because when this guy get in place, he made it very clear. I'm going to be a dictator. I don't want you to be a dictator for a second, never mind a day. You know what I mean?
But also, to that point, it's right in there, that these folks argue a separation of church and state. Right? How is this a separation of church and state? When you're saying you want to strip the powers of someone because you don't like it, and yet the things that you want is what everyone has to live at. Isn't that how Russia is like.
That's
Russia's having
tyranny.
an election.
No, exactly.
Right.
It's like where's the religious freedom,
Right.
and the fact that there is no official religion here in the United States. It's just that we say, oh,
You can be an atheist. You don't have to have a religion.
No, you don't.
But-
And then the in the Constitution, not the Constitution, but in the Pledge of Allegiance, it says "one nation under God," and I believe that was during the McCarthy era in the 1950s, because it used to say "under the Constitution," and during the McCarthy era they changed it to "under God," but it should be under the Constitution, and the idea that they said, oh well, because Russia didn't believe in God, we put God into that. But and so one of the things that kind of like jerks me is the fact that, again, America the Pilgrims did the same thing when they got here. It's like they came here for religious freedom, but they outlawed all other religions.
Yeah.
And that's why Roger Williams had to leave Massachusetts and form Rhode Island. All right, and so it's the same thing. It's happening now. It's like, no, well, we got religious freedom as long as you follow our religion.
Right. Your freedom is to believe what I want you to.
Exactly.
Right. So we're going to pivot for a second here. We'll continue to discuss this. The call-in number here is 617-282-0685. 617-282-0685. Since in this week's edition of the Bay State Banner, City Hall backs off plans to move O'Brien School. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu has backed off from plans to move the O'Brien School from the heart of the black community to West Roxbury, meaning that the city's premier Academy of Science and Mathematics will remain, at least for now, on Malcolm X Boulevard. And the key operative for now in Roxbury, in an exclusive interview with the Banner, the first-term mayor said on Monday that she would continue to push forward to address decades of underinvestment and deferred maintenance in Boston's aging school buildings, in spite of the setback to her plans for the O'Brien. She also stressed the importance of community inclusion in the planning process, addressing a major complaint around the sudden announcement last year of the decision to move the exam school. Meaningful community engagement must be at the core of every plan, not just a guide sound decision making, but to have at least an lasting impact. Wu said, every year that we move forward with school building projects, we move closer to delivering full access for our students to have the highest quality education with arts and sports and state-of-the-art science and technology. In a letter released publicly this week, Mayor Wu and Boston Superintendent Skipper said they will make further announcements. But is that, I read into this and something doesn't smell right, John. I don't think that, because initially, and Siddiqui has called in numerous times. I know he and Sister Priscilla, who was one of the broadcasters here at the station, they had been advocating, and very few people have been voicing any real concern, sadly. So I'm not sure what the real pushback was on this, or was it from folks on the other side in West Roxbury? That complex has been closed down, and they weren't happy with having a school out there anyway. Did they not want it?
And that could possibly be. I'm not familiar with. I don't have any information
Neither do I,
relative to why she made the decision. But if I had to guess, I would say that somebody with a whole lot of money have targeted that property and said, no. Let them have what they have and deal with that issue.
I think about that.
We need
you
to,
might
this.
Be onto something.
I mean, because that is prime real estate, Doc. I was just
it's
over
like
there.
An island.
Yeah, I was actually. My wife and I drove by it. My granddaughter goes to a Beaver Country Day, and she was doing a play, the Newsies. So she called me up and said, "Grandpa, you coming to my play?" Okay, and so we driving by. The GPS took us by that school. And I was like, "Oh my God! Look at the property.
Yeah, the size of the driveway.
I mean, it is actually prime real estate.
And you have the nice athletic campus, the football field, and there's a nice park there, and you
have a nice view of the city skyline.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? No. That is not going to move there.
No.
Someone with a whole lot of money, or a group of people with a whole lot of money, said, no. You need to keep that where it is, and we will actually purchase this, and it's going to end up being converted into condos, and it's going to end up being some money for the city.
It's like
That's
a
how I
little
see
island, and you may be right. I mean, they're closing more schools than they're opening. I've seen this charter schools growing at a faster pace with new state-of-the-art schools and campuses than the BPS. So I don't get where they're coming from this, but. We'll see. Look like the callers have woken up. Good morning, caller. Welcome to At the Round Table with MAMLEO.
Good morning.
Is that Brother Siddiqui?
Brother Siddiqui.
Yes, I just want to. I was doing some work here and listening to you, gentlemen. And
that is work listening to us.
I'll offer you some clarity about the situation with
help us out here,
John D. O'Brien.
Because this came out of nowhere, Siddiqui. What?
Well, not necessarily. It's been in the works. And let me just tell you that the bottom line is that this was a victory for the people.
I agree with that, but I'm just trying to figure out what facilitated this victory, because everything was no.
The politics of the situation. What it is that, the parents have been active. I got involved with the parents.
Okay.
And basically, let me just say this: they were very gracious in terms of my being involved with them, because of the fact they said that they were really pleased that I was willing to step up to work with them.
Mm.
So the bottom line is that what happened was that you might recall that we sent a letter down to the mayor saying that, not asking for a meeting because we knew she'd say no. We said, we coming, like Dion. On the 14th of December, we met with the mayor, and of course there was a follow-up meeting, but what was really key was that when they talked about the fact that they wanted to move the school because at the present location it couldn't accommodate the future needs of the students. They said they want 600 more students or what have you. So I spoke to David Lee. Now, you remember Stalin Lee, of course, Mr. Stahl passed away. I said, David, can you come up with an architectural design that would accommodate the very issues that He said, absolutely.
Mm.
So David was the key to this whole situation because of the fact that we came back at the mayor and her people saying, look, you're saying that you can't do anything with this facility based on its present status. We have this nationally renowned architect in our community who's saying he can come up with that design. So that's their problem because of the fact that they couldn't say, well, we don't care what David Lee says, we still going to move it. They knew that the community wanted the school to remain where it is, and that there's an architect who can come up with that design that would keep both that and Madison Park where it's presently located. So that was a political decision made because not only were folks in Greater Roxbury upset, but there were folks across the city who were upset in terms of what it would mean for our young people. So it's really important because there's so much going on out here that's negative that this is a victory for the people. And for our young people in particular, that's the reason why I got involved.
Well, no, and let me just say congratulations on that. I guess I'm just a little skeptical because I know how the inner workings work. In that, I want to contribute it to, and like I said, taking nothing from the work that you and others have done. By no means. I just know that usually our voicing our objection to something usually doesn't get the response of that usually there's some underlying, as Dr. Bradley alluded to, something about the property out there and folks on the other side. Because I know, like recently, there was some folks who wanted to put a charter school over in Rosendale area, and the folks over there said no, and now that building is going to be erected down at Southampton Street, and not one of the more desirable neighborhoods for our kids to be walking through. And Madison Park it's like a tale of two cities, Siddiqui. And I know you and I have had some disagreements, and I said, I can tell which kids are Madison Park, which ones are the O'Briens, because usually the kids at Madison Park, they're not carrying book bags. The kids from O'Brien are coming out, they're more orderly. You can tell it's like night and day. It's reality. If you have a set of eyes, you can see that. I say that because what really needs the attention, and I'm not saying the O'Brien doesn't, because the O'Brien, those kids will function and develop no matter where they are. It's not the building. Yes, they do need the advanced technology. They do need all of those things. But on the right next door, the only thing separating is a wall, and there's no learning going on. The violence, I still get reports from my folks who are involved in this, how bad it has gotten down here. And I think that the advocacy for the O'Brien, and it shows, right? Because folks are saying, look, we're invested because our kids are learning. And right next door, we have a school that is crumbling, not just from the building, but from learning. And I don't see the sense of urgency for that school and the advocacy of forcing learning to be taking place in that structure.
But let me just say this. that the bottom line is that the next step is going to be a meeting with the mayor. The mayor is calling for a meeting on March 13th.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is that we're convening a meeting next week of the O'Brien/Madison Park Parents United.
Mm-hmm.
So what it is that what you're talking about is going to be addressed. This is not just about the O'Brien.
Mm.
We're talking about that whole complex,
Okay.
not only from a physical perspective, structure-wise, but also what goes on within those walls
Because
to address the very thing that you're talking about.
Right, because if I'm not
it's going to be a new day over there. We've declared it as the Educational Opportunity Corridor.
Mm-hmm.
RCC, Madison Park, you've got O'Brien, and the incoming, we got another discussion going on around the Franklin Cummins Institute is coming in because we've been talking to them about their name because Ben Franklin was, but what you're going to be seeing a new day over there in terms of opportunities for our young people, and it's because
but Sadiq, let me just
parents have been amazing.
Right. No, I'm not saying, but I guess I would be curious to see how many of them were O'Brien parents, because I know those parents have been invested from the beginning. So I'm not surprised that there may have been a pushback from those folks because they see the value, they see what their children are getting. On the other side is the Madison Park, right? Because I heard that a high level official at Madison Park was recently removed from the complex recently, and I don't have all the details as to why. And the reason I bring that up is because that school has not had any stability, gentlemen, for quite some time. It has had a real revolving door of administrators in that building, principals in that building. There's been no stability. The O'Brien, to its credit, has had a stabilization. I apologize. I don't recall the female who was a black female who was the principal there for quite some time. And when she left, it was her deputy, her assistant principal.
The headmaster is interim right now. The headmaster at O'Brien's interim.
At the O'Brien.
Yes.
Okay. So who is there now? Because
what I'm making is that the parents from Madison Park and O'Brien are coming together in terms of the demands, not only from a structural perspective, but also what goes on within the walls. And let me just say this about West Roxbury. They weren't against getting that school. The goal was, through the Wu administration, that's a STEM exam school.
Mm-hmm.
Those white people in West Roxbury were not opposed to that because the goal was, and we know it, was to turn that over primarily for white students. We know that's what the deal is.
Well, see, people don't understand that there is no longer an exam for mostly to get into those schools. It is now your zip code has a lot to do with it. So moving it out from Roxbury to West Roxbury it's right back into the same scheme of giving an advantage to a certain segment of the population who live in West Roxbury.
Oh, so it's no longer required to take an exam to go to those schools?
No.
Wow.
And the exam schools are no longer, and then people fought for that. And so, and we're seeing, because before I left, I saw it had Latin Academy, there were some issues there with some of the students, and unfortunately, they just couldn't compete in that environment, and they were being disrupted. So I think
you're still going to take the test. You still have to take the test. And a lot of it has to do now with zip codes.
Right.
There's a certain amount of folks in terms of zip codes, but they still have to take a test.
Right. But I'm saying is that zip code, it plays a big part in that, right? And that our kids, are unfortunate, because I guess for me, and Dr. Bradley helped me out, you and Rhodes as well, is that the O'Brien should not be the exception. It should be the norm.
Yeah.
Latin Academy, right? We have more dysfunctional schools than functioning.
I think the fundamental thing as far as like going with Madison, although no matter what, even if it's a vocational school, that people should still be encouraged or enthusiastic about learning something or going to school. No matter what it is you're learning, like you're still going to school. Be proud of that and take, again, like earn the grades and like go there to work.
Right, but I'm saying we spend in Boston almost $1.4 billion with a B on education and a declining population. And someone's saying that anywhere around 22,000 students every day are absent in Boston.
Yes, it's half the population.
That doesn't get That doesn't get the attention that it does. The charter schools have siphoned off, and so the only places that people equate with learning in Boston public schools are the exam schools. But we pay the same money in the regular mainstream schools as we do the exam schools. This is not a private school where people are paying dollars. This is funded education. Why such a disparity, Dr. Bradley?
Well, first of all, when you say that we have 22,000 people that are not coming to school, my first response to my mind was, where are the parents? Why aren't the parents involved into this? And then the other thing I think is that Boston, the public school system has been forced to tolerate the recalcitrant student who refuses to learn. And they allowed that student to actually disrupt the education in the classroom. One of the suggestions that I made when I was at Randolph Public Schools as a public safety officer was to give that student a computer and connectivity to the internet to go to school on Zoom, because the system says I have to educate you. It doesn't say I have to educate you in this building. So if you have issues with dealing with people, interacting with people in the building where you're so disruptive, I am not going to let one student destroy the education of all students. So we have to come up with a way, number one, to involve the parent. That we have taken that individual out of the equation, and also an alternative to the education as relates to in the classroom, face to face.
You raised a valid point, because during COVID, when there was a shutdown and kids had to be at school, I think parents learned it wasn't easy, right, to get kids to log onto the computer, because there was an article in the Globe where they said over half of the kids weren't even turning the computer on, and they're at home. So just imagine what these teachers are going through, and you have one disruptor in your class.
So if I'm not going to behave, if I'm not going to actually obey my parent, what makes you think I'm going to obey a teacher?
Yes.
And so the problem I had at Randolph Public School, which I straightened it out the high school real quickly, I said, hey, listen, if your child cannot come into this classroom and sit down and learn and behave, then you handle that situation. And here's the computer, and here's the connectivity. And then it all stopped. The problem is that our school system is not, and I repeat this, it is not a daycare. It's an educated institution.
Supposed to be.
And we should not be using it as a daycare. So that means that the parent should have to play an active role. If not, the child will be removed out of the building and put into another alternative education.
Absolutely.
So Siddiqui, gentlemen, like I said, I commend the work that has been put into this, but I think this also highlights as well, right, is that there have been numerous schools in mainstream here in the city of Boston that have closed down, have not been performing, and there wasn't the response from the parents. And this is key. The O'Brien, because it's an exam school, and the parents there, in my opinion, have been more invested because they understand the quality of the education that their kids get. How do we get the rest of our folks, Siddiqui, to take it as serious as these parents are at this time, because they saw what was going to be taken from them and their children, and they stood up? But we've had these same problems at Madison Park for years, and there's been no improvement there.
Well, I think what you have to look at, like I said before, this meeting that's going to be coming up is the O'Brien / Madison Park Parents United.
What is the agenda for that meeting?
Basically, to make sure that there's a united front in terms of the presentation.
But what does that mean?
But no, what it means is that the mayor is calling for a meeting on March 13th to get feedback from the community in terms of where they stand on the schools. And so we want the parents to go in there united and say that we want, first and foremost, that David Lee be the lead architect, and the parents want involvement in terms of any curriculum.
When you say the lead architect, you mean in the design of the building? Or
the whole complex, not just the whole complex, yes.
So, Siddiqui, let me just say this, and Dr. Bradley, and Rose, please help me out here. I don't disagree with that. I mean, like I said, you could put those kids in the O'Brien in a tent, and because of what they're involved with the support they get and all that, they will learn. If you redesign Madison Park and you don't address the safety issues and the things that are going on there, all you have is a nice. I'll give you a perfect example. They spent millions and hundreds of millions on the new the Dearborn School there on Greenville Street, I believe. And the problems in there, it's a state of the art school, but there's very little learning taking place in the building because of the behavioral situation there. So I guess if we don't get a handle on that and direct that, no matter how nice the building looks, it's like putting lipstick on the pig.
But see, it's more than just how nice the building is going to look. Like I'm saying, I'm really impressed with the spirit of the parents from the O'Brien and Madison Park, they're looking beyond just the structural aspect of the buildings. They're talking about improving the quality of life academically for the students across the board.
And how? But how?
I'm optimistic.
How?
Like I said before, there's so much negativity going on out here that it's really important to emphasize this is a people's victory.
I don't disagree with that, and I commend you guys for that. But I guess, Siddiqui, what I'm looking at is...
Do you know what it takes to get Mayor Wu to flip the way she did? It was based on the fact that the parents stood up. I just supported the parents. It's them that made this difference, and they're saying to Wu, we want input in terms of anything that goes on structurally or academically at both schools. So I think, I used to teach in Worcester, Massachusetts. Worcester Trade years ago was the lowest rated trade school in the state. Now it's ranked number 1 or 2 because of the fact that the parents stepped up. So let me say this other thing also too, that as I've indicated in the past, that we at the Black Community Information Center want to open up, establish a health clinic, a walk-in health clinic in Nubian Square, and we recently met with the Undersecretary of Health from the Healy administration, and just for your consumption there, Larry, he has indicated after the meeting, he said, he says he's coming to Nubian Square. He's been informed that things have improved significantly, and he'd like to come back and do a walking tour in Nubian Square. So just so you get a sense of what we've been saying in terms of what's improving there, he wants to do, this is the Undersecretary of Health who wants to do a walking tour of Nubian Square because he had heard that things had improved significantly. So you're welcome to join us when we do that walk.
Yeah, let me know. I'll be there. Matter of fact, I'll be in Nubian Square Monday. I have a meeting down at the bowling building. But also, I guess, what is on the table to address the basically the dormant inactivity, I should say, of the vocational aspect of Madison Park? Because,
like I said, the key for me is the parents. And I think that it's really important to understand the fact that the parents are stepping up. That, like I said before, I didn't say that this meeting with the mayor is
I get that, and I commend you and those other, because I know
don't commend me. Commend the parents.
But I'm saying is you're taking a part in this, so I give credit where credit is due. Everyone who's involved in this should be commended for it, because it's not an easy thing to do, to take on, Goliath taking on Sam. It's not easy to do. But again, I guess what in as far as numbers, and I know people say, well, numbers don't mean anything, but I mean it shows the difference, because normally when these things take place, very few parents get involved, and like I said, the O'Brien parents, it's a whole different animal. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm saying is that I'm not surprised that the O'Brien families stepped up in this case, but I see so many times in all the other schools, these things take place and they just close down. Like, for instance, when they now no longer have middle schools, and I think they were important because I think there was a transition, and we're seeing the problems when you're putting young kids in there with these older kids and there's no separation. There was really no pushback at all for this taking place, and they were saying, well, we don't have the population is declining. This is where I don't understand what they're doing when they're closing all of these buildings and that they're saying they're going to renovate, because honestly, if they're not going to deal with the vocational aspect over at Madison Park, then that complex really should be dedicated to the O'Brien.
Well, let me just say, I think it's really important, rather than, like for me, I've been over to the O'Brien and Madison Park. And so I think it's really important. Like for me, what's important is that there are Madison Park parents who are saying they're going to step up, and I believe that's going to happen. And let me just say that we have to have a certain level of optimism and be supportive. Like RCC just had its big gala for its 50th anniversary celebration. I was one of the co-sponsors. And Jackie Jenkins Scott, who was interim over there, they raised $7 million. The student population has increased 43%, and so I'm saying that in terms of this educational opportunity corridor, I'm just thinking along the lines.
But that's a great happening right. Here. But that's a great point you bring up,
young people, and it's going to include Madison Park. I'm telling you, it's coming.
I was going to say, but
let me just. I spoke to Jackie Jenkins Scott the other day.
Yeah,
there's students from Madison Park High School who not only at Madison Park, but they're actually taking classes at RCC. And now you've got the what's the name school coming in there, the Franklin Cummins School. I was through there yesterday. They started construction. I'm telling you, there's some good things happening over there. We got to support those parents.
I'm
and
not
those
saying.
youngsters.
Listen, I'm not saying that. And that was my next question. Was and you kind of is that how many kids and what's the partnership, which is literally a stone's throw away from RCC, of assisting the kids at Madison Park, because there isn't a desert of education in Boston, specifically in Boston and surrounding, that our schools should be in the shape that they're in. And we give these colleges huge tax breaks, and they give us very little, if anything, in return. So what is the commitment from RCC, which is literally the neighbor to Madison Park?
The lines of communication are there. Like I just stated, there are students from Madison Park who are taking classes at RCC.
Okay.
And what's happening is that what's interesting is that the incoming Cummins Institute of Technology, the sister there, Dr. Francis, is already communicating with Madison Park because they want to have a working relationship with them, because you know what they do at the school, the incoming schools are coming in. So they're going to be working directly with Madison Park. I'm telling you, I'm optimistic for some very positive things are going to be happening over that corridor for our youngsters, and I'm really pleased with what the parents have done to keep that exam school there, because that whole corridor is going to be important in the future for our young people. So just stay tuned.
Gentlemen, I want to be optimistic, but I'm also realistic because I've seen very little improvement.
Well, you got to be over there in the mix. Like I said, I
was in the mix for the last 12 years.
No. I'm talking about what's going on right now in terms of these folks that are stepping up and saying, this is going to be I gave it the title, the Educational Opportunity Corridor, but it was based on the interaction of these different entities that are saying we're going to work together to see to it that we're going to have an opportunity here academically for our students, no matter which one of these schools they go to.
Well, Dr. Bradley, you're in the education academia. You teach at some of the premier colleges. How many students, and does it tell you where the students are coming from?
Not necessarily. You
have an idea.
You have an idea, but what I would say, just being in education, is that the facility means a lot, but on the same side, you also have to have the programs internal. And I think what brother and Sadiq can definitely speak for himself. I don't need to speak for him on this, but what I'm interpreting that he's saying is that this is not going to happen overnight. This is something that's beginning to develop, and that they have not lost sight of the fact that internal to the structure, you have to deal with those issues. Those issues will be dealt with, but you have to also we can chew gum and walk simultaneously. And I think that's what he's saying here. I'm happy, inside to know that the parents stepped forward to say, because I thought it was money. I thought it was someone out there saying, no,
right.
We're going to keep this property. But to hear him say that, no, the parents came out to say, no, this is going to stay where it is. And oh, by the way, we know that we have problems in Madison. So the parents from O'Brien and parents from Madison, we're going to come together. We're going to put our heads together, and we're going to work not only on improving the building, but also improving the program that's happening inside of the building.
Because again, it's a great facility. I remember when I went to school here in Boston, that you spent half the day in your regular high school, and if you had vocational training, so if you went for electrical, mechanical, or whatever, you go in the afternoon to the O'Brien. So I remember when the O'Brien was kind of literally the vocational school that you went to in the afternoon, because in the morning you go to your regular high school, and then in the afternoon.
Right. Well, see, brother, before you say this, because to me, this has a very, very sincere historical issue here with me. I shouldn't say issue, I said perspective. Look at it from this perspective. In the past, it was forbidden to teach us how to read.
Correct.
It was against the law to educate us. And so now that we have moved forward, and now that's no longer the case, but the country, people still want to prevent us. You do it through violence. You do it through disruptions. But the fact that the parents came up to say, I want my child to be in an environment where he will learn. What I thought about was community education. And the way I'm going with this is that we push community policing, where the community involved in the policing. In this particular situation, the parents, the community is involved in setting the education agenda.
Yes.
And when we have that, we now have a movement. How do we maintain that?
Yeah.
That's what my hit. That's my hit.
Right, but here's a piece that jumps out at me. It says Boston Mayor Michelle Wu has backed off from plans to move the O'Brien School from the heart of the black community to Rex Roxbury, meaning the city's premier academy of science and mathematics will remain at least for now. For now, right? So I would like to hear a commitment for in-depth, because we're coming up into an election year for the mayor, right? So is this just to get me through the election? Because there are a lot of issues in the community. We've got the immigration issue around the city that is, so is this a political thing, or is this, because I don't believe there's much sincerity with politicians.
Yeah, but Larry, unfortunately, that's the animal that we have to deal with.
Right.
Because when we are approaching the election, that's when people start to listen. But that can also be a strategy for the people who want movement.
This is why I say to get it. It says but she's saying for now.
Yeah, right. But
I need a long-term commitment.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to. But the fact that she's addressing it for now, that long-term commitment can turn into a long-term commitment if the parents stay attuned to what's going on. Because what she's seeing votes. Right. You know what I mean? Which is what Siddiqui is saying, is that don't lose sight of the fact that the parents are saying, not Siddiqui, not some agency that's coming into the community, but the parents who are going to the polls saying, this is what we want.
And I think, if we're honest with the mayor ran on quite a few things. She ran on fixing education, mass and caste, crime and violence. And
how many she has done? I'm just curious.
I think you answered. I'm struggling with trying to find where there's been much improvement on these things. Education. I think the state has not relinquished back to the city control. That's the other thing that at some point, either someone has to ask the state, what is the grade and what has been the improvement that you continue to allow the city to operate and control the schools when instead of putting them in some type of receivership, because things have not improved as far as the education piece. And this is another example of that. Or what's the report card on the city's progress, and what's the timeline of seeing any improvements for our kids? Because we can't continue with this, we'll just, pushing kids through the system where we have tens of thousands of kids that are not even in the school. So if we know that half the kids aren't showing up every day, that means that half the kids are not being educated, and that's not being addressed. And I think there's less than 10 truant offices for the whole city. So again, I commend the folks for on this issue with the O'Brien, but because I see this issue being far-reaching, in that it's not just the O'Brien that is dealing with this problem it's the whole entire system. Again, I guess the biggest point for me is this, Joe. In the last election, the residents of Boston voted to have an elected school committee, and the mayor has not implemented that. That has not taken place, and that, I think, would address a lot of these underlying issues of who really has a say in the education. So this carve out here gives the mayor a little cover and gives folks a little victory. But the bigger picture that would address this, in my opinion, is having an independent body of people who could be elected just like the mayor, but who are their daily task is the education system in the city of Boston.
I don't disagree with you, but my response was, how did we get there? Because it seems to me it should be a done deal. If the citizens have chosen through the electoral process to say that we want, we voted for this, that should be in place, and there should be a movement on making sure that that's in place. In the interim, though, in the meanwhile, you still have a dysfunctional school system that has to be addressed, and that's, by the way, a whole lot of money is going into it. And I think what's happening at Madison Park is a potential, corrective move to dealing with the issues that we're having in our public school system.
But this is what I'm saying, Doctor. This is why that should be at the top of the agenda for this meeting on the 13th with the mayor, is where are we at with the elected school committee? Because we voted on that. Because if that doesn't change,
Yeah.
and you have to go through this with each and every school, and not people who are elected and accountable. Boston is the only school committee that is not elected in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
but it also should be a part of the the electoral process. The campaign process. Someone who's challenging her, because that should be out there. I mean, I didn't know that. I mean, I don't live in the city, but I still should have known that I should have known that. And if I don't know it, I'm pretty sure other people are saying, well, we voted for it, it's going to happen.
No, but that's a great, like you said,
it should be out there.
anyone that is going to be running against her, that should be like one of the things you promised this, and it never came to fruition.
No, the people voted. She said she wanted a hybrid or some version of that, or
It doesn't
really
work that
nothing.
way.
That's not what they voted for.
That's not what they voted for.
No.
They didn't vote for a hybrid. That wasn't the question on the ballot.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So then she's not doing her job then.
But this is what I'm saying. This is where that should be dominating this conversation on the 13th with these parents. That should be in the front and center, because without changing that, the mayor is the only one who really, because the mayor controls the school committee. Let's be clear about that.
But Larry, the parents got to be aware of it.
Yeah.
They might not be. That's where I'm going.
Exactly. That's
they might
exactly
not
what
be
I was
aware of it. So if they're because if I was sitting in that and I was living in the city, I was sitting in that meeting, I would say to her, "Where are you on this?
Yeah.
This is what the citizens asked for." I'm pretty sure I wouldn't get an answer.
Well, she's
But
already
the fact that,
expressed where she is on it. It's no secret that she doesn't want it, because she wants to have the control.
Then I think she's opening up her flank for an attack during the electoral process, during the campaigning process.
I agree.
Her flank is wide open.
So, Siddiqui, is that part of the conversation, or do you think it should be?
No, the focal point is for the parents of Madison Park and
But having an elected committee, having an elected
issue of what's
right?
gonna
But
happen with that block.
Siddiqui,
And let me just
let me say this.
by saying-
Okay. Let me say this, and I'll let you close. This is what I'm saying. Having an elected school committee that the voters voted on would be the most powerful thing they can do coming up, because then that gives them control over the people who are making the decisions, and not this puppet master that the mayor is controlling the school committee, because they're all appointed by her. That to me is very significant in moving the agenda and moving forward what these parents want to have, because they have people who are accounted by the voter. The mayor is one person, but then she can pivot it back saying, well, the school committee, they're not independent. They work for the mayor.
Yep. Well, I support what you're saying. It's just that this meeting is very specific in terms of what's going to happen in that whole block with the mayor.
Okay. No, but
And so-
I think what Larry's trying to point out is the fact that another point can be brought up, a point that can make a fundamental shift in the conversation.
Let me just say this to you. In the world of politics, if you do that, then the mayor will play with it politically, and you won't even achieve the goals that you have at that meeting, because she'll go into other subject matters, and you won't come up with what you're trying to achieve with your agenda, which is to stabilize that whole block in regards to her accountability.
I think
And
the two are not separate.
The meeting that she's calling for is to respond to comments from the parents from both schools in terms of what's happening in that block. So that's the focal point.
So
I'm in
what
support
if-
of what Larry's saying. We need
so
an elected
what
school
if
committee, but that's a
one-
whole nother agenda, a whole nother meeting. So,
All right, just be
Let me
prepared.
just say that
Yeah, good. I know
I'm,
you got to.
as a grandfather, I'm optimistic in terms of what that block is going to present for our young people, because there's a presidential search going on for RCC. They've got to get a new headmaster for Madison Park.
Another one.
Headmaster at the O'Brien is interim, so I'm assuming they're going to bring in a whole new crew of young folks with a vision, with the support of parents, to see to it that that's a highly productive area for our young people, and I'm optimistic. So,
Well, Siddiqui, thank you. Keep us informed. Let us know how this meeting goes on the 13th. We'd love to have an update on it. And like I said, I have no problem. If people want, I'd love to attend, because I think sometimes, even if I say nothing, or folks like me say, just having folks in the room, when people know there's somebody in there knows that can rebut what they're saying, keeps them on the straight and narrow.
it's going to be virtual, but I'm just proud of these parents, man.
Yeah.
I'm just so proud of them. I just don't know what to say.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. But gentlemen, I don't know how you change it without changing, like I said, because that was a huge ask, and
Like you said, the people voted for it. So
Voted for that.
if this is with the will of the people, then as a representative of the people, you're supposed to do that.
right, because a little carve out of an exam school and parents who clearly, it's just like why I moved, why you moved, why your parents put you in a different school system, because they were invested, and that showed their willingness to want to get you educated, right?
Yes.
But a lot of these families can't navigate. This is why we our elected officials claim that this is what they're going to do. They're going to be there for everyone. We know that's not the case. But having an elected school committee, they're independent from the mayor. These are people appointed by her. And the public has no say.
So where does the school committee get its funding from?
They get their funding from the city, from the budget. It's in there.
And so when the mayor creates who creates the budget?
The city council.
The city council passes it, but they also they
back and forth. Yeah.
Okay, so where I'm going with this is that oftentimes where the money comes from is where the power resides.
Right.
So
I agree
that's my head.
But it also comes from the citizens who have said to this mayor that this is not working for us, and that Boston is one of the largest school districts in this Commonwealth. And it doesn't have a small town like Sharon and Foxborough and Randolph have an elected school committee.
Yeah, it has an elected school committee that's away from the
administrator, right?
But the money that supports the school committee comes through the school department. That comes through.
But it's I guess it's the same thing, right? When the newly formed Post Commission, the Police Oversight Standard and Training, right? I'm appointed by the governor and the attorney general, as all nine of the commissioners that are on there. In the law, we are independent, and the reason for that structuring of that is because once we're appointed, we are now deciding we don't have the fear or threat of anybody removing you because they don't like a decision that you made. That's why I see and that was intentional, right? Is that if I'm appointed from this person and I serve at the will of this individual, then I work for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. But where I'm trying to go is that the mayor is not going to lose much power by doing what she's supposed to do, because the money coming from the city. But the important piece is that the school committee is not beholden. The members of the school committee is not beholden to the mayor. They're beholden to the people.
Exactly.
And that would really makes a difference. So I don't really see. I'm agreeing with you. I don't really see why she's reluctant to do it, other than the fact that she doesn't want to relinquish power.
That's the
thing. She doesn't want to lose that power.
Absolutely, but that's the part that is the control of their. They don't have the independence in that if she wants things a certain way and she wants them to be the face of pushing it, somehow that is their opinion, but it's not. It's hers. That's what they have to do.
Well, I think one of the things that the school committee should, regardless of who, independent or not, one of the things that they must address in the Boston public school system and any system that housing multiple people is the issue around violence, recalcitrant behavior.
Look what's happening.
Recalcitrant people who are engaging in those behaviors.
Brockton is a small system. Look what's happening down there. It's on the news almost every other day, right?
Well, didn't they ask the National Guard?
We're saying they want the National Guard to come in because of the violence. So what learning do you think? And I, you and I both worked very good with the former mayor who passed away, Bill Carpenter, right?
Carpenter, yeah.
That Brockton was really doing well. What happened there?
One of the best high schools in the country,
right?
In the state. But see, what the problem is that when you have violence, there's no learning happening.
Yeah.
There can't be,
right?
And when I was again, I'm gonna go back to my 7-year experience in security at Randolph Public Schools. I had teachers who were so engaged in refereeing or preventing the fights, they could not explain the different types of mathematical equations. They could not explain. So when I had students come to me to say, well, this individual, Dr. Bradley, was causing a problem. And so when my teacher tried to explain, tricks around mathematical tables, my timetables, in the middle of the explanation, they start a fight. And so now they had to stop.
Right.
And now I have lost all this. So it becomes important that we keep the family, the parents involved in the discipline for students. Here's
the other thing. When we talk about gentrification, right, here in the city. Now, we have to be also honest with ourselves about reality, right? And people say, how can you make that connection? Just like when I talk about, I can tell which students are Madison Park, which ones are O'Brien. Now, in the last probably 7 to 10 years, we've seen an influx of people from Boston moving out to Randolph, Brockton, those surrounding communities, right? Would it be interesting to find out how many of those kids that are now in these schools, that these problems have come from a problem school system, because Brockton didn't have these problems. But there are more people from Boston moving to Brockton, moving to Randolph, in these surrounding towns where it's a little bit more affordable. Is there a connection? I'd be interested to see if there's a connection between these, because all it takes is one bad apple.
Well, I think, well, first of all, Randolph and Milton and Avon and all those schools that those towns that run right down the 28 corridor.
Yeah.
Have direct access to Boston. So we constantly have. When I was at Randolph Public School, we had issues from kids coming from Boston into in town of Randolph to settle scores.
Right.
This kid walked into the school. You're not even a part of the school.
Right.
But he's coming from a Boston public school system, and he's now in Randolph trying to deal with this issue. What I'm trying to say to you is that there have to be this collaborative effort between all towns, in dealing with the most recalcitrant, most difficult child in the school.
Right, but you also have to, if you're going to listen to the parents, I think the most important thing the mayor can listen to at this time is pushing the elected school committee to have the parents have a body of people whose everyday task is nothing but the education of our kids. The mayor has to run the whole city. And on top of that, have an input in it. There should be an independent group of folks who are running the school committee, because when you go to these meetings, it's just a rubber stamp of what the mayor wants.
Yeah, but in addition to that, Larry, the safety and security of our schools is absolutely essential.
And
you cannot have education if the child and the teachers feel that they are not safe. It's just not going to happen.
No.
Abraham Maslow gave us a perfect image of how those needs should be met. And I would advise people to go and take a look at that. But my point here is that we're not going to have a quality education system, and Boston was one of the best without a safe one. If we can't have safety, everything out the window.
Rod, you attend those meetings on Wednesday. On Wednesday at the Baker House. 95% of what has been discussed is the behavior of our young people, the violence in the schools that spill out into the communities. It's young people.
So why are we not getting that kind of issue in the suburban schools like the Winchesters and the Welsleys, and those affluent communities? Why are we not seeing that? We have very, very state of the art buildings in those schools. But you don't. But the programs. I have people calling me to go to certain schools, high schools around the state, to teach criminal justice, because so those high school students can come and can graduate with a college degree or with college credits. All right, because the safety in the school is top notch.
Well, our next guest is going to be talking about some programs that might be helpful in trying to quell some of this violence. Like I said, there are some aids. I'm not going to say solutions, because we can't solve there's no solution to solve the problem, but there are things that we could be doing better. And
I feel like it's in the DNA of this country, where that post-traumatic slave syndrome again has never been actually addressed.
Right.
So no matter what progress we've made, it's always been met with a pushback and resistance, and then so again, we're still surviving and we're still here.
Hold that thought.
This is how we're doing it.
Light. All right, we got to go. But listen at the Roundtable Mail and take our break. We'll be right back. Do you want us to move over here? You want to move in this chair?
Sure. Yeah, go on, brother. Go on. You hold on. I be the secondary. I like
hustle real hard. Hustle. So if I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya. No, I came up from the bottom, always rooting for the underdog. Hustle real hard.
I wrote 300 songs in 1 year, Boogie will tell you I'm on it. I got unreleased songs for days, they don't want it. Eat any MC in the game, it ain't a challenge if your music reflects who you are, then you's a coward. I can see through the lies, you ain't living what you spitting. If your money's so long, while your dog's in prison, while your baby mom's stripping, while your mom's still living in that same broken home that you used to sell piffin'. You ain't gotta lie to me to sell me a track. You ain't gotta rock fake jewels or walk around strap. I respect artists getting money, but love them for spitting crack. And the fact that one track can move a family out the trap. It's a dream for us lost souls brought up in the mix. I'm motivated by the artists coming out in my midst. And the artists that paved the way when I didn't exist. Music's a skyscraper, I'm just trying to add a couple bricks.
This is for the dreamers. They say I am a dreamer. Cause I still believe that anything is possible as long as you work hard.
Hustle real hard, hustle real hard. Hustle real hard, hustle
So
real
if
hard.
I never see ya, never get the chance to meet ya, no, I came up from the bottom, always